Welcome, everybody, to the Podman community meeting. Today is Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. Just have a quick overview of what's going on today. So we meet on the first Tuesday of even-numbered months. Timing might be moved from time to time for making things easier for India, China, Australia, and other folks. Topics are driven from prior meetings or requests to me, and/or the agenda that we have is up and available online at any time that you want to go ahead and add a topic to it. Discussions are accepted for Podman, Builder, Scopio, or any related container projects or even container topics that you'd find interesting. Our meeting notes are listed here on this slide. I will put them in the Google chat in a moment here. And then for today, we just have, oops, can't change there. Just a couple of topics, so plenty of opportunity to ask your own questions. So we have we don't have a Podman 5.4 update unless Matt has something he wants to talk about quickly. That was a cut and paste error. We do plan to talk about the updates to the CNCF governance document that Matt has been working on recently and will be going online soon. We're also going to be talking a little bit about upcoming changes to the Triage and Upstream authority, part of which is driven by our move to CNCF. And then just a quick reminder that our next meeting for the community meeting anyway is June 3rd, 2025. And with all that, I'm going to wrap up and hand it off to Matt.
Okay. Hi, folks. Let me drop a link in the chat of the governance model. So the governance model is a pull request against the Podman repository right now. We've been working on it for, I want to say, a month now, and I think we're getting very close to where we want to be. There are still some points that we are debating, and I think we'll have a public debate on one of those points a bit later. But I just want to say that I am trying to get this merged by end of this week. And with that, we'll be adopting the governance model as soon as it merges and basically starting to run things according to it. Honestly, we're trying to run as close as we can. We're trying to run things as close as we can to it, even as of now. But once it merges, we'll be officially following it. And now, I believe we can actually go back to a debate we were having a couple minutes ago off this call. Brent, do we want to talk about whether we should have a role dedicated to triage and specifically to assist us with triaging issues upstream?
Yeah, I think if you just walk the roles real quick for everyone, and then that probably would help seed that conversation. And maybe somewhat explain the mismatch in roles and what we have to do.
Sure. Give me a moment to get the text size big enough that people can actually see what I'm talking about. And let's see. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see this, and is text size okay?
Yep.
Okay. So basically, as the governance model is written right now, we have 3 roles for contributors of authority. The first one of those is reviewer. Reviewers are intended to be code reviewers who do not have merge authority. They're primarily going to be looking at pull requests, identifying things that can be basically doing pull request review. They are also involved in issue triage. And they have the authority to review pull requests, but not to merge them. Then we go up to maintainers. Maintainers are people with merge authority, but only on a single repository. The Podman project, as you may know, was donated in 3 separate pieces, Podman, Builder, and Scopio. And because of that, we don't have a role that has right authority on all 3 of them initially. We have the maintainer role where you have right authority, but only on a single repo. Basically, you're familiar enough with one of the projects to be a maintainer, but you are not someone who's familiar with everything. And then finally, we step up to core maintainer. Core maintainers are people who have enough experience with the project to make decisions for the whole project. So you get right authority on all repositories. You get a vote at meetings where we decide the fate of the whole project, things of that nature. And what we don't have is something underneath reviewer. So we have a role that is eligible to review pull requests, but we don't have a role that has more limited privileges and can just go ahead and look at issues and decide this issue needs more information. I'm going to apply labels to it to that effect. This issue has been triaged. I'm going to apply labels saying that it's high priority, things to that effect.
Can you scroll down so we can see the reviewer privileges?
Sure. So these are the responsibilities, requirements, and privileges of reviewers. So reviewers have very limited privileges in the sense that they have the ability to approve pull requests and they have the ability to recommend other reviewers, but that is it.
At first blush, this seems to be pretty good in terms of at least what I had for the idea of a triager. Do folks see any issues with or any conflict between reviewer and triager? Can they be the same thing?
I think it's already written into the responsibilities that they will assist in issue triage. So if we want to have them be the same thing, that is perfectly acceptable. I can just add to the privileges that they have write authority, but only on labels. I think GitHub calls it triage authority. That will allow them to go in and basically mark issues up the way that we need to work on them. Yeah.
I mean, that seems reasonable. So the one thing we talked about was this does not include like rerun ability because that requires write authority on the repo, correct?
Well, I would hope that we could get reviewers the ability to rerun tests, because while they won't have merge authority, they should have enough to approve pull requests. I'm hoping that'll be enough. If it's not, then that would be tragic, because it's very hard to review pull requests without the ability to rerun the tests.
Paul, is that even, I mean, rerunning the test keys off write authority, no?
That's my understanding, but I also think if you log in the Cirrus Web UI with your account, you should be able to rerun your own tests, even if you don't have write on the repo. But I'm not sure, since, well, my account obviously has all the rights, so not quite sure how this interface looks if you don't have any permissions whatsoever. In Cirrus, at least. On GitHub, I know it will not present you with the option to rerun if you don't have write access. In general, if the concern is rerunning tests, and I mean the pain isn't just a reviewer, a new person, the pain is for every maintainer all the time clicking rerun. If we want to have a better automated way to do that, then that's something that can be worked on. That, you know, if you have some higher privilege bot kicking off the rerunning the tasks for you, that could work for anybody, I guess.
Others? Tim, you're from the Podman desktop folks. Do you have any thoughts to contribute?
You're catching me out. I was starting to look at something else.
Okay. Well, Matt, I mean, I guess the question is what I think this whole thing just revolves around write authority and what that really means.
I don't think the reviewer role should have write authority. As written, it's not someone who should be merging things.
Agreed.
So I'm okay with it as written. I'll just expand it to say that they will have triage privileges in GitHub so they can modify labels. But I would really like it if we could get the ability to rerun tests in here. And I know that that's what I'm saying. We've just decided is impossible, but it really sucks that it is. Tim.
Sorry, I don't know if this helps, but I know we have a case where when we have something in draft state on GitHub, it only runs a subset of the tests, but if you add a label, it'll run more tests. So that might be a way of giving somebody who has reviewer, like who can't commit to the repo, but hey, they can add a label and that'll change which tests run.
Yeah. The specific problem we're trying to solve or understand or talk about here, Tim, is that we have tests that will periodically fail or flake, but our merge bot will not allow a merge to occur if tests fail. So you have to have the ability to go in and click rerun, to get it to rerun and pass. And that requires GitHub write authority as far as we know today. So we have a mismatch in what we'd like in terms of what we'd like for privileges versus responsibilities.
Yeah, that's an odd, unfortunate one on GitHub.
I mean, it's probably more of what Paul is saying, I think, is that perhaps is more related to how the Cirrus plugin to GitHub works or something. So we've got some exploration to do.
Yeah, but again, maybe there's like a label where you can have a bot that looks at a label and if it's added or removed or something, it has the authority to go rerun the test. I don't know. There's more work.
Not a terrible idea.
I mean, the basic issue is sort of we have different CI systems, which makes this really difficult. We have mainly Cirrus, which offers you to rerun either via GitHub UI, where there's a rerun button for each failed test, or you go into the Cirrus web UI if you actually go into the details, and then you have another rerun button there. I'm not sure if both of them need the same privileges or not. That needs to be tested. But the real problem is if you go further than Cirrus, there is Packet, which has some packet-specific commands to rerun. I have no idea what permissions those need. And GitHub Actions is used as well, not really much on Podman, but there are users, and those will only ever be rerun via GitHub, obviously. So that's sort of the issue. And I guess in the day-to-day work, only care about the Cirrus, but the other stuff must be considered too.
Ashley.
I know our OpenShift bot has like a /rerun command. Does that do anything, or is it, or will that trigger any of our tests, or will it do we currently have it to ignore things?
My understanding is the rerun command will rerun tests that you have written in OpenShift.
Okay.
Which we don't have any. We don't use OpenShift as a test platform. We just use the bot as a merge protection.
Okay, because I think I might be wrong, but Packet has a /packet retest function. So I was wondering if we had like a command that we can configure users to be able to retest things. But if that's not how it works, then we can look into other options.
Yeah, the OpenShift commands are all set up with like their own OpenShift VI sort of thing.
Yep.
Okay.
It's all that's another issue with us using like part of OpenShift bots. It's very confusing what's implemented and what's not. In OpenShift, the way it works, you have like the OK to test, and then people can run retest as far as I know. The Packet one, as I said, that exists and works. I'm not sure if it works for everybody or only checks the permissions of the user who wrote the command. That I'm not sure.
Yeah. I guess like the other thing is like maybe we can look into if there's a way to re-trigger off tests based on comments, so that it kind of we could set custom permissions, but that's probably a whole other can of worms too.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is always you need to consider abuse, and people can like trigger, I don't know, like thousands of jobs if things go wrong. It's also not that great. I mean, right now they can create as many PRs as they want or force push as often as they want. So I guess that's already a possibility for them to go rogue, I guess.
Matt, maybe there's a card here to at least educate ourselves on what permissions are required to do what.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Spike that out, and then we have information to actually operate from.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Tom is apparently having to drop because his laptop is having issues. So I will ask, is there anything more we should do on this? Because I know there was another topic you had, Brent.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, so just if there isn't, let's transition to the other part.
I think that's reasonable. I'll stop sharing, and all yours, Brent.
Yeah, there's nothing specific here, but I do think we as a team have never sat down and sort of come up with, a final or a collective decision on when dealing with issues and PRs that either languish or are inaccurate or won't do or those kinds of things. And as we're trying to have an effort, if the team doesn't, the outsiders haven't recognized, we're trying to kind of build up a little bit more of a process so that we do what we say we're supposed to be doing, and that's about it, kind of an approach. So I think there's a couple of topics in there, Matt. Maybe you can kind of help us guide through some of it. But one is, what do you do? What are the requirements for issues? I think we're generally in agreement that we don't want to go through and just start closing all out issues because they're old, because we do see some value in that. And it's been pointed out that if somebody did want to come and fix something and contribute it, we don't really want to hide that stuff either. Generally, is that the case, how the team feels?
That's how I feel. Let's say.
Yeah. Others?
I'm okay with it. I'm not completely satisfied with the answer, but yeah, I don't have a better solution.
I think if we kind of generally agree that we can find something that works for those that get stressed out by the sheer number, but yet we don't close the door on things that may be valid or somebody wants to contribute to. I guess one of the things I've been kind of kicking around is, what is the criteria for actually closing an issue that's not going to get done? And one of the ideas I was kicking around actually with Lewis the other day is I'm kind of thinking there's certainly staleness is a factor, but it can't be the single reason why you would close off an issue. But I'm thinking that it's a combination of stale, not enough information, like they didn't provide the minimum information, and no reproducer, and possibly something else. Does that put a level of comfortability for folks, though, if we were to come up with criteria like that was sort of multi-headed beast, that we would begin to close some things?
Tim.
Yeah, this my feedback. I think there's some things that are just clearly bad ideas, architecturally wrong, whatever. And I think you respond to those and say, no, it's not going to get done. But the things where you say, hey, I need more info, and then you don't get a response, or yeah, it's not a bad idea, but we're working on other things, and it never seems to get done. It's just easier if you use a stale bot. It basically, the one that we use in Podman Desktop, it puts a comment in. You decide how many days. There's no activity. It puts a comment in, says, hey, if you care, put a comment. If you don't, it's going to disappear in another 30 days. And again, you configure it. And then it just closes it out. And, I think that non-human, it's not somebody saying, no, we'll never do this. It's just a bot is a little bit friendlier for whatever reason. And you don't have to worry about those. That's my 2 cents.
Comments from folks? I have one, but I'd like to hear from others. I think that, Tim, we do have I think we have a stale bot, but that's the part we're just not quite comfortable with. It may very well be valid, but just because, it could be a valid bug, but not high enough priority or not something we're able to nail down because we don't have the hardware or the environment. And maybe somebody comes by and does and is willing to fix it. That's our hesitation on having a stale bot be the sole deciding factor.
Yeah, but I mean, people have that period where all they need to do is drop a comment like, I still care about this, and it stays open. Or you just live with the fact that, if it was important, somebody else is going to open another one, or somebody will reopen it 2 months from now.
A lot of me talking, and that means that I'm going to get my way if you all don't speak up.
I think there are 2 things. So first of all, we are pretty much already closing everything that's we don't want to do this, or it's invalid or not possible or whatever. I think we are trying to move towards more of this gray area, right? And some things we know we won't work on, but we didn't close them because technically they are a bug or an issue, but they aren't important, or it's, I don't know, whatever distribution you never heard of, something, or where you cannot confidently tell it's not a Podman thing, but your gut tells you it's not a Podman thing or something like that. And this is sort of the issue, since it's a very personal decision if you think it's actually not something we do or not. Because I, as individual, it's difficult to make the decision. We will never do that. Maybe the colleague thinks it's a great idea and stuff like that. I don't know, or it's a real issue. This is sort of where in my eyes, what the policy needs to address in some sense, where we have some line of definitions, what counts as we keep and what counts as we close.
I totally understand the difference between stale and the things that we cannot do, right? And Brent we can close them if they're stale, but Brent was talking about they are valid, but we don't have it's not part of the priorities, or it's not in the direction that we want. Maybe how about adding a label to them, like say help, and if someone from the community wants to pick it up, they can easily go and look at these are the tickets that the Podman maintainers need help from, and they can go and do the help. And stale bot will still continue, and if they don't respond, it gets closed. But if they respond, the help label thing will keep it open, and you as maintainers don't have to take care of it, but someone from the community can take a look at them.
Yeah, if I can, I agree with what Mohan said and what Paul said. I think it's important, like these stale bugs, there are two parts of that. Like one is that it's some sign for us that we will not be working on that, maybe, because if we don't have it in priority list and so on. But we have to also clearly communicate it to the users that like this is not something we count with right now, if nothing changes. So I wouldn't close those bugs. I would keep them open, but also keep the communication clear, like and honest, that right now, if nothing changes, we don't treat it as a priority, and we will keep this open for someone else to take it. Or if something changes in our resources or priorities, we might get back to it. I'm not sure if the issue is that we have too many issues open and it's hard for us to orient in that. In that case, I would just label them, and really those which we do not care about, let's filter them out, but still leave them open because they are still valid. Of course, if the issue is not valid at all, and we would never accept the PR no matter what on this subject, I would just close it with explanation. So, I mean, that's also what I did in my previous projects I was working on.
One thing I'm wondering is if we're trying to take, or what I'm maybe trying to take too big of a bite here. And, we look at this mass and that's what's giving us hesitation, is this is just too big of a thing, or what? I'm wondering if going after this more tactically, in the sense that we go after specific ones and agree upon those, it cuts down X% of what we got. So an example would be, I think for me, one of the more frustrating aspects of the issue reporting is an incomplete issue, meaning they didn't give us enough information to understand what's going on. There's no reproducer, or the reproducer is really crazy and not something you can really expect to do. Anything that's just missing, to me, I'd like to see those get handled. Out of this entire conversation, those would be the ones I would like to get off and closed, because I'm not sure an issue that's incomplete is of any help to anyone long term.
Yeah, I think I was first, so I will start. So I think if you close the issue, then if someone else hits the same issue and finds it using Google half year from now, it can be opened, right? So I mean, if it makes it easier for us to maintain the backlog, if we close such issues with some explanation to the user that they are free to open it once the information is provided, I think that's a good way to go.
We close and lock legacy issues to basically prevent. We have an epidemic of people commenting on really old issues and saying, I have this too, even though it's been fixed. So we really want people to file a new bug in that case and give us proper information.
Or it's an extremely generic error message, and it can be 15 different things that falls under it. That's not productive either. I guess I'm going to cue Ashley here, but the one thing I would say is this would not be out of the gate. What I'm proposing would not be I reported an issue and I'm shutting you down. You didn't give me everything you want. It would have to be in combination with a lack of response. I think we all agree we'd give them plenty of opportunity to fill in the blanks. Ashley?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is like the use case of putting a label on saying needs more info, and then if after X amount of days there's no new comments or no updates of the issue or updates of information, this is where I would want things to be automatically closed. I don't agree with closing stale issues, but issues that have been around for too long, but issues that are missing information and the reporter hasn't responded, that's where I would like be 100% okay with closing it after a few days. So something like putting a label on it saying like needs more info, and then if a comment appears, we can automatically remove the label, and if no comment appears or there's no updates after that time, we could automatically close any issues with the label of like needs more information after X amount of days.
Do we have across the board? And please object if you don't like this idea. Is that something we can agree on?
Yeah, although I would think we should bump it out more than a few days. Just
Yes, of course. So let's circle back to what that should be. But if someone doesn't like this idea at all, then it's moot.
Well, I like the idea. Just here saying few days, and that part.
Yeah. What? So in general, other than dictating what the time is, I'll just sort of say, is that a good compromise for how we would manage our issues?
I think that's how it's already done, just not automated. And that's where I think is the good thing, to have it more automated.
Well, I have two motivations for talking about this, Paul. One is, I think you and I are kind of more prone to doing that. So I would like it to be applied across the board by everyone. And the second piece is, if someone is unhappy with what we did, I would like to be able to point to where we documented this is how we're going to do it. So that's the other piece here, why I'm trying to get everyone on agreeing on this.
Yeah, are you talking about doing this just for Podman, or rolling it in Podman and then expanding later, or doing all at once, Podman build a scope deal?
I think that Podman's a good testing ground because we get a lot of everything, and if it doesn't work, then it's not going to work in other places, probably, would be my guess. So I would say trial it, document and trial it in Podman if we agree. And if there aren't, complaints, then it seems like something that we could just pass in real quickly to others.
Isn't the documentation already in the issue MD, or how did we call this?
It doesn't precisely call this out. Like it says we may have closed your thing for this, that, or that, but it doesn't say this is how we're doing it explicitly. So I would like to tighten up that. I would like to tighten that up. I was thinking either 30 or 45 days on the time.
I think 30 is sufficient to give somebody time to get back in and say, yes, this is important, or what have you.
The real downside to this, I'll just sort of say, I'll spill the beans here. The one downside to this approach with a label needs more info is, I think the upside is clear. The downside is users can't take labels off. So if a user fills in what we needed, they can't remove the label. Somebody is going to have to do that from the team. And that's kind of, or we're going to have to assume that if someone comments, that was enough to remove the label and have it automatically done. But that's the one thing I see that's kind of problematic here.
Yeah, that's what I think with automation. You need to remove the label as soon as there's a comment from the user, and then if it's not enough, you need to apply it again, because
Yeah.
if they comment, you technically need to read it again, no matter what. Like you didn't know what the reply was, so you need to open it. The if you do it manually and forgot to remove the label, which will absolutely happen, then then we have the problem of the bot closing things it shouldn't close. So
I'm not hearing enough to say that we shouldn't make a PR that's got the rule and start trying to do this and see how it goes.
I think
Folks
we're
agree?
pretty much in agreement. And are we going to document this in issue MD on the Podman site?
Yeah. I think there's two pieces of work. There's the policy, and then there's the sort of the automation and the message we're going to use. So I can talk to. I have some ideas. I'll talk to Ashley to see if it's even possible.
Just wanted to say, currently we have set the stale date as period as 30 days as per the document.
Good place to start.
30 days is good as a number, but the issue with the stale bot is it just doesn't work correctly. There are hundreds of issues where it will not put stale on, even if they are stale. So relying on that could be a problem.
I think there are lots of different stale bots, Paul. Maybe part of the answer is we need a different one.
Yeah, absolutely. Just mentioning that if there's automation, then it must be consistent.
Matt, I would say we've made good progress on at least one, and maybe that's how we need to do this, because just trying to wrap our arms around the whole thing is probably a little daunting. So in the future, we just talk about specific cases that we're trying to deal with.
I think that's reasonable. I'm hearing we might want a card for the automation around getting information from people. Like, it sounds like that is something that's important to us.
Yes.
Okay.
Why don't you hang tight, though? I think I kind of have a way I'd like to see this work, and I want to talk to somebody like Paul or Ashley to see if I'm way out in left field.
Okay, reasonable enough. Conversation seems to be tapering off. Tom, do you have anything else?
I do not, other than open forum and questions. If anybody has anything there for that, or topics for the next meeting or meetings. And while you're thinking about that, I'll just go through quickly that our next meeting for the Podman community meeting, which is more of a demo meeting, although this one wasn't so much, is on June 3rd, 2025. And I will ask Navya, and I apologize if I messed up your name badly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Navya. I just joined this meeting because I am doing some POC work on using the Podman in my project. I heard that the Podman is a daemonless and it can run with rootful and rootless access. But I am trying to use Podman on ECS Fargate service regarding some work in my project. So will that be possible? Can I use a Podman inside the ECS Fargate service? Since the Fargate is serverless, I don't know how I can use that Podman inside that service. I have read all the documentation available in the internet regarding the Podman, but I'm failing to do that. So it would be so helpful. Can you give some guidance, or do I have any documentation for that?
I don't really know. So my understanding is that the AWS serverless stuff is containers itself. Because of that, Podman in a container is possible, but it usually requires elevated privileges from the container, the outer container, I mean. So it would have to be a privileged container usually. Am I right about that, everyone?
Okay. Okay. Then it means, yeah, I mean, since AWS is serverless, it is managed completely by AWS. I do not have the privileged access for the underlying host. So it means that I cannot access Podman inside the ECS target service container image, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, you're going to need, so in order to run a container on a rootless container, you need at least caps sysadmin, or no, you need capset UID and capset GID within the user namespace that they assign you. If you're running inside of a container, often they're going to give you just one UID or a group of UIDs. But they probably will not give you, so it depends on how they set up the container. I'm not familiar with how they do it. If you look for a blog called Running Podman and Kubernetes, you'll see some of this discussion there, and that should help you figure out if it's even possible. Because usually it's going to be permissions. You're going to get permission errors.
Okay. Got it. And I have a small another question. I mean, I have created using the UID. I have created a user inside my Dockerfile by giving the UIDs and sub UIDs based upon the documentation. Whenever I change whenever I give the permissions to the user, still the container is not running. It is saying that it is exiting the container by saying that host keys is not found. I mean, do I need to create any SSH keys for the user because I'm not finding any related documentation? Is it what seems like?
I think it'd be best if you just open up an issue on GitHub or a discussion on GitHub, and then people in this meeting can correspond with you, because we'd have to really see what you're doing inside of it, and might be able to help you out, or at least ask you appropriate questions for how, to look at the environment that you're running in. So I think we should move this to open up a discussion on the GitHub page.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's all I have. I had these couple of questions.
Okay.
Navya, I've added a link to the blog post that Dan was talking about in the Google chat here for you, and I'll put it in the meeting notes as well.
Okay.
All right, and then going back to the meeting schedules that we've got coming up, we've got one coming up on May 6th, the Cabal meeting, which is more of a general discussion of things that should be happening within the project rather than demos. And that is it for upcoming meetings. So one last call. Any further questions or comments or topics for next time? If not, we'll wrap up and thank everybody for coming today. And I'll stop the recording. Thanks all.